All right, everyone. Hello and welcome in. In a handful of days, the Minnesota Vikings will participate in their second preseason game of the 2021 campaign when they host the Indianapolis Colts in Minnesota on Saturday. Still a long time to go between right now and when we open the regular season with the Cincinnati Bengals in week 1 in Cincinnati. Still a lot of practices left to go. Still 2 whole preseason games we've got to get through. The point is, nothing is set in stone. There could be a lot of changes between now and then. But for today, I sort of want to do a status check, get a pulse of the audience. You, the viewer, let me know in the comments below while we talk about this. How are you feeling about the projected starters for the Minnesota Vikings, both offense, defense, and even special teams? We'll touch on them briefly in this video just to sort of go over what it looks like is going to be the opening day lineup, because I got to be honest, a couple of weeks ago, even before training camp started, I had a much different vision for what this team was going to look like on paper heading into that opening matchup against the Bengals. I wasn't thinking that we were going to see Oli Udoh break into the starting lineup. That was so far out of left field that I don't think anyone saw that coming. Same thing can be said about Nick Vigil. There was an open competition for the linebacker spot that I thought somebody else would win, but apparently he's just been too good that nobody else has been able to pass him, or actually the inverse of that is nobody has been good enough to really challenge him properly. We've got a whole bunch of different things to talk about. We'll go over each one briefly here today, and then you let me know, how are you feeling about the projected starters? Are you confident? Do you feel a little taken aback by what's transpired over the last couple of weeks through training camp and the first preseason game? Let me know how you're feeling. So behind me, for all you visual learners out there, this is a rough mock-up of how I believe that the Vikings will walk out of the tunnel as their opening day starting lineups, both offense and defense. It's done in a way where it kind of looks like an on-the-field thing, but I had to sacrifice for space some of the integrity of what the offense looks like. That's why it is in the formation that it is, because it's not the biggest whiteboard on the planet. So I know I'm also blocking a couple of names, but Bashaud Breeland, Tyler Conklin, and Adam Thielen are both there. I just couldn't fit everything in frame, so it's just, we're going to work with what we have is basically what I'm saying here. So, but this is just a nice little visual you can follow along with as we talk about it. Let's start with, I want to start with the offense. Let's go there because I think there's a lot more set in stone here than there is anywhere else. So let's get the obvious things out of the way. Kirk Cousins is your quarterback. Dalvin Cook is RB1. Your 2 starting wide receivers, Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, solid on the books. The reason that I have gone with a 2 tight end set for this format is because we're the Vikings. That's what we like to do. We don't like to run 3 wide receiver sets. We like to run out of 2 tight end sets because, let's remember, this is still a run-first offense. So we've got Irv Smith up on the board. We've got Tyler Conklin behind me, as we have talked about. All of that feels pretty good, pretty solid, no real position battles there. If you wanted to pick my brain about wide receiver 3 right now, I'd say it's a toss-up between KJ Osborne and Dede Westbrook, who is unfortunately getting a late start. But word is today from the Vikings official Twitter account that Dede Westbrook was a full participant in practice. It also looks like he might be running away with the kick return / punt return jobs, which we'll touch on at the end. But I think the primary focus when we talk about the offense is going to be, as is always, the offensive line. Go figure. So I don't think any of us anticipated Rashad Hill being the starting left tackle week 1 for the Cincinnati Bengals. If you're wondering what the status update is on Christian Dareus, there was some information put out there today that he was given a 2 to 3 week timeline at the time of his second surgery, which was on August 12th. So that puts him in the ballpark to potentially work out, practice, and get more involved with the team leading into that first regular season game. So he's going to miss the whole preseason, and I think he's probably going to not be a starter for the first, I'm going to guess, month of the regular season, because it's not that he's not ready, it's just that he's missed so much. Like, he's barely participated in anything over the course of training camp. He's not going to see most of the preseason, if any of it. So Christian Dareus, it's all going to depend on how quickly he can soak up information and learn on the fly, and it's all going to depend on if the injury heals correctly. So we've already seen he's had complications. I'm not confident Christian Dareus is going to be ready for the first month of the season. I'm just putting that out there now. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. But that's kind of the vibe that I have right now. So Rashad Hill, I have penciled in as the projected Starting left tackle, I don't really think that this is going to change. I know that there have been comments made by coaches that Oli Udoh could potentially get reps at left tackle. I don't know if he did today. Blake Brandel looks like he is going to be the swing tackle backup. That's another piece of information that kind of has me scared about the status of Christian Dareus being readily available for the first month of the season, is that they are hyping up Blake Brandel this much. So he's going to be on the roster as your backup swing tackle. Not that we're here to talk about backups. We're focusing on the starters, which, let's move on to Ezra Cleveland. I haven't really heard a whole bunch about him. I figure he's safe. Garrett Bradbury, obviously the center. They're not going to change that. The right guard position could still change. Oli Udoh right now seems to be running away with it. Dakota Dozier is bad. He needs to be part of the next wave of cuts. Wyatt Davis is interesting in that he's faced, sort of this introductory to the NFL where he's not the man right out of the gate, right? Because he comes from a pedigree of Big Ten Conference, All-American offensive lineman, one of the richest programs in terms of development, talent coming from Ohio State. So he's faced some adversity right out of the gate, has Wyatt Davis, and I expect him to get better as time goes on. But he was the third-round pick, despite projections last fall that he would be selected in the first round. Sometimes I saw his name listed in the top 15 when we were doing mock drafts back in August last year. But Wyatt Davis is slowly inching his way, I think, into the conversation for being a starter. But for right now, Oli Udoh is running away with it, and I'm fine with that as long as it's not Drew Samia and it's not Dakota Dozier. I will take Oli Udoh for at least a while. And then we have Brian O'Neill, the superstar right tackle in the making, who is looking at a contract extension. That's your offense. So overall, just closing thoughts on the offense. Most of this is what we assumed it was going to be, except for our rookies who we were hyping and praising right after the draft and leading into training camp. Look like they're not going to be much of a factor early on, if at all. I think Christian Dareus and Wyatt Davis will eventually work their way into the starting lineup. It's just not going to happen as soon as we want. And that gives me concern because I don't know how Rashad Hill is going to go, how he's going to perform, as the starting left tackle protecting Kirk Cousins' blind side. So far in practice, the offensive line as a whole hasn't been great. So we got to look out for that. Let's move over to the defense. A little bit more confident in this unit because of the amount of resources that's been poured into it this year. Start with the defensive line, which I think is going to be amazing this year. I think it's really going to be good. We've got some great depth at the defensive line. Danielle Hunter comes back. Michael Pierce has been the talk of training camp in the preseason. He has looked phenomenal. Can't wait to see him play on Saturday if he does it all. Dalvin Tomlinson is your, nose tackle masquerading as a 3 technique. He's going to be great. At the other end of the defensive line, we have a position battle currently brewing right now between Stephen Weatherly and DJ Wanham. I'm predicting the safe, boring bet that Stephen Weatherly is going to win the starting job, at least for week 1. But I would like to see DJ Wanham win it. The news about Everson Griffin is that they're still weighing their options. I don't think that we see anything develop with that. At least for another week, because there's this thing about vested veterans having fully guaranteed contracts signing before week 1 or something like that. So they're playing the waiting game with that right now. So I'm going to project Stephen Weatherly wins that other defensive end job, at least for right now. That could change. For the linebackers, Anthony Barr has been injured for a while, and this is kind of concerning. I'm still going to pencil him in as the week 1 starter because does he need the practice? Does he need the reps? No, I don't think so. If he's healthy for week 1, he'll be the starter. Right now, he's not healthy, and it's kind of concerning. I don't know what's going on. There's been no real reports. If anybody knows more than me, feel free to share that information. Eric Hendricks, safe bet as middle linebacker. Nick Vigil. The linebacker competition for this spot, vacated by Eric Wilson, hasn't been good, and Mike Zimmer has said that time and time again. So Nick Vigil is kind of winning this by default because nobody else behind him can step up. We've had the retirement by Cam Smith. I think Troy Dye is destined to be cut or even go to the practice squad. It's really all up to just Ryan Connolly and Chaz Surratt, the 3rd-round pick out of North Carolina, to see if they can make some moves. For the secondary, it's kind of sad that Cam Dantzler isn't on this board right now for this year, but it is what it is. Bashaud Breeland, Patrick Peterson are your starting corners. I don't really think that that's going to change. Xavier Woods and Harrison Smith, that is a stone-cold lead pipe lock. Those guys are not changing whatsoever. I believe your starting secondary is set in stone unless Bashaud Breeland just, totally screws it up and then just hands it to Cam Dantzler, which I don't think will happen. So that is going to do it for your starting 11 on 11. Just to briefly touch on the special teams, Riley Patterson was released. We did, sort of briefly talk about that earlier in the week with an injury designation. He never really got on the field, never really could show what he could do. I think he kicked like one day. So Greg Joseph kind of wins by default, but he's been somewhat automatic in practice in the preseason. He's made a lot or even most of his kicks, if not all. I don't know if he's missed one. Not that I've heard. I figured the first missed kick, everybody would just go into pandemonium, and it hasn't happened. So Britton Colquitt is probably going to be the punter. They did work out another punter earlier in the week, Max Duffy. They didn't sign him. I think that was just done as a motivational tactic to make sure that Britton Colquitt doesn't have as bad of a game as he did against the Broncos. So we'll see how he does against the Colts. The long snapper job is set. And then as far as the aforementioned return jobs for kick return, punt return, D.D. Westbrook, I think, is going to run away with those. Amir Abdullah is a solid backup. I think anything's better than Chad Beebe at this point. So let's just kind of end it on that note. So once again, let me know in the comments, how do you feel about this projected starting lineup? These are just my personal projections. There's going to be people that have way different ones than me, and you yourself might even be looking at something else. But I feel like most of the position battles are over. I feel like this is going to be it. We still have the one position battle for right guard and defensive end, and I think that's all. I think that's all we're going to see. So this feels pretty solidified. Let me know what you think in the comments below. That's going to do it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.